Well, girls, I am so glad that you are all here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to come on over and visit me. Unfortunately, we have some things in common that aren't all that great, but I am hopeful that what you're doing is shedding light on this grave situation to help other people. So thank you so much.
We're so glad to be here, and we're so proud of you with your premiere. It's a big deal.
It is kind of, but you know what? I've been so busy. Tonight is the big premiere. It was supposed to be last night, but we had this ice storm. It's been one of those weeks that whatever could go wrong has gone wrong. But, you know, I feel somehow buoyed by God, you know, my spirit. I know. Maybe we could just dive into this. This has been a spiritual attack for me. Mm-hmm. What do you think? For you, has it been similar, Christina? Do you think you're under attack?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I absolutely do.
What's a little bit about your story?
Well, I was living in this beautiful house that looked beautiful on the outside, and it turned out that it wasn't waterproofed just to withstand the basic elements. And we got super sick. And during quarantine in particular, when schools had shut down, our kids started going a little bit crazy, and our 3-year-old was running into walls. My 8-year-old was beating up her big brother, and I was just really not feeling well. And I finally got a mycotoxin test that showed that my scores were through the roof, and someone said, test your house, and tested our house and found Stachybotrys right by my daughter's wall, the one who was going crazy. And then that was really the beginning of this journey for us. And I'm learning it's a lifelong journey, right? I think for all of us, it's going to be a lifelong journey.
You're so lucky that you had somebody say, get a test.
I am so lucky. It was a long journey to get there. It was a really long journey to get there because I'd gone to a lot of other doctors, right? And nobody had ever, I didn't know what mycotoxins were.
Yeah.
And it's not that they were bad doctors. They were great doctors, but they thought it was stress. They thought it was, you know, if I just reduce the stress in my life, maybe get a different job, which I did. I reduced my stress. I got a different job. I got a different diet. I, you know, did all the things to get healthy and get well. And I only got worse, especially during that time when I was working at home, right?
You're in the house the most, yeah.
When that was toxic. And everybody was in therapy in our house. And we were just, you know, we didn't know that there was a root cause to it.
Well, it's amazing that you've made it through this far, and I'm so grateful that you have. What about you, Lauren?
Yeah, well, my story starts with my youngest daughter who was having tons of health issues, and we couldn't figure out what was going on, and the doctor didn't know. Ended up finding a functional medicine pediatrician that suspected that she was being exposed to mold, and ended up diagnosing her with PANS pandas, which is autoimmune encephalitis. And I was also having health issues at the time. And just we didn't believe at first that it was mold in the home that was making us sick. And it was when I spoke with Emily on the phone. I called Texas Mold Inspectors to come look at our house. I still was in denial. And they found that there was mold in our home that basically due to builders' negligence, right? So the AC was oversized. There was mold in our HVAC system. And that's what was causing my health issues in my youngest daughter. So it was infuriating to discover that someone else not doing their job right was the cause of our illnesses. And when we tried to fix what was going on in our home, it stirred things up and made me worse and my daughter worse. So it's been a journey. And like Christina said, like your life's changed forever. You can't do anything the same as it was before. Mm-hmm. So everything, when we go places, walk into buildings and, we immediately smell mold or see it and we have to turn around. It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. So. And Emily, tell us your story.
First, I want to say one of the biggest blessings in my story was meeting her, because I was still going through it. We were still in recovery, And, we started a business because of it. And I met Lauren, and you were such a blessing to me because she became a friend, and now we've been friends for years, and she's the graphic
You're a blessing to me, girl.
design artist for our foundation. But, my family and I moved. We moved from our beautiful new home in Austin to a small town to slow our life down. And before we ever moved into this townhome, we were very healthy. I don't take any medication. I never have to take Advil. And all of a sudden, we moved into this home. And the first week, I started to get symptoms. My dogs did too.
Your dogs, how did your dogs get symptoms?
So my dogs are very well trained. Never have potty issues.
What kind of dogs?
A Doberman
Doberman.
named Kuja. She is my running buddy. And then we have Yorkie. His name's Charlie. He's a Yorkie. And the first week, they were going to the bathroom in the house like they couldn't hold it. And they would feel so bad, and I had no idea they were just being affected. But Kuja was the most affected. She tore the skin off her tail that first week. She was biting at herself. Like, she was just very itchy.
And people don't realize that animals have 100 times greater sense of smell than humans do. So imagine how it does affect them.
Yeah. It affected ours too. He had like yeast and
Really?
yeah,
Yeah,
his eyes and the white dog multi-poo. But yeah, it's big time. But go ahead.
But we had just moved, so a lot of people just thought that we were just stressed, because it's stressful to move. And we moved from a city to this small little town, and the pollen's higher there too, so they thought that could be a culprit. And so we just, we kept making excuses. But the longer we stayed in it, the worse we got. My son, who was developing normally at the time, he was the most perfect, sweetest child, and he just became very difficult to handle. And he stopped wanting to be around people. He wouldn't look at you in the eye. He regressed and lost his words. He had tons of GI problems, diarrhea left and right, like all the time. He would just start screaming for no reason, and it was a type of scream that he couldn't control. Like, he would scream for 40 minutes straight, sometimes over an hour, and I'd have to call his dad, Josh, home to come help me because he was just fighting me, and he was inconsolable. But luckily, we did find out it was mold, and
It's not lucky, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
The blessing is that what we found is that if it is mold, unlike other conditions, unfortunately, mold can cause people to develop lifelong conditions. But for a lot of people, they can detox and they can regain their quality of life back. They may never regain all of their health. Like, we didn't regain 100% back, but we regained enough to where we have a quality of life back again today.
Yeah. Christina, you had a pretty significant job, still do, especially as a mom. Your wonderful son, Cooper, is standing here.
That's my number one job.
That's number one, yes.
Yeah.
Number one, most important thing on the planet. But you gave up your career to work on this full time. Tell us about that.
Oh, so yes,
You forgot about the other job.
No, I didn't know which job you were talking about,
Yeah.
because when I was working at a really awesome, big litigation firm, and I was running patent cases with 30 lawyers, and I loved it. I was doing big trials. And when I wasn't feeling well, I left that job and I took a job at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Say that again. U.S. Attorney's Office.
The assistant, I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which was a dream job also. Don't get me wrong. It was a dream job also. But I did it to get well, to slow down, to get better, right?
You thought that was going to be slow.
Well, it was. I mean, it was just so much. It was, and it was part of leaving the super stressful thing. It was a journey to get well, right? And it turned out that I didn't get any better because I was still exposed and I didn't know. So anyway, I did that for a while and I loved it. But I was doing personal injury defense for the United States, and then I suddenly needed to build my own personal injury case for my own family, and I started calling personal injury lawyers in Texas, and nobody would take my call, even just to consult of how do I build a case about mold. They just would not talk about mold, would not talk to me, would not help me in any way. And so I started building my own case, and I found heroes along the way. I always say Bob McKee was my hero because he took my call. He's in Florida, and he would be like, "How's my Texan friend? How's my favorite Texan lawyer?" And he coached me through how to build a case. And eventually I just decided that so many families are hurting and none of them can find lawyers either. And I've now dedicated this overeducated mind to understanding the law and the science. And I believe that the science has caught up to the law, and I believe that we can prove it. And I want to raise up an army of lawyers around the country to do that. So my firm is called Just Well, and we represent sick families against the people who made them sick.
I love that. The common denominator that we all have is that doctors told us it was just stress. And
Yes.
sure, we start making excuses. Oh, yeah, you're right. I am stressed. I got to slow down. But then when you slow down, and I remember I had this doctor say, when I was affected, do you remember cassette audio tapes?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
So this is back around the year 2000, 2001. He gave me this audio book with there were 6 different audio cassettes, and everyone had different nature sounds. And he said, go
my
in the
gosh.
bedroom, turn off the lights, close the door, unplug the phone. Remember when we had phones that plugged in, and listen to these sounds on nature. And I thought, well, number one, why don't I just go out and sit in a tree stand with my husband?
Right.
But then it didn't help anyway. I felt like, there again, I'm in the house more. What would you tell yourself, your younger self, to do if you had it all to do over?
Oh, that's a hard one.
What do you think?
I would say advocate for yourself. Listen to your gut, because my gut knew something was wrong. And and I remember when I went to the doctor and they did the ultrasound and they did the blood test. They're like, everything's fine, and I was like, no,
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong, And then she wanted to give me birth control. I was like, well, look, it's not just me, okay? So it's also my son and my dogs. So something's going on, and birth control isn't going to be prescribed to my son to help him and not to my dogs.
Right.
And they weren't looking further. And at that time, I had no idea that there were functional medicine doctors out there that actually look for the root cause, and I wish I had. And I wish I knew that medical doctors weren't educated on mold illness, because I did ask one doctor if it could be mold, and he told me no. And so I think that if I could do it all over again, I would just say, listen to your gut instinct. Don't just listen to your doctor, because you know what's going on. You feel it, you see it. And so just keep investigating and looking into it.
Yeah. I think that for me, doctors told me, can't figure out what's wrong. I went to every doctor, name a doctor, I went to it, including an iridologist. I went to every chiropractor, acupuncturist. I went to one doctor. We were in a little town called Hanover, Michigan. And that's when I was teaching group fitness classes, like 12 classes a week, high intensity. I owned my own aerobic studio. I was named Detroit's most physical female, but I felt like I was dying. And this doctor told me, well, maybe you should eat McDonald's more often.
Oh my goodness, are you serious?
I'm not kidding you. I mean, the other problem, Christina, that we have is that we need to educate, not just attorneys, through no fault of their own. Some of them, they're not trained in this, and neither are doctors. So where do we go from here? How do we get this word out? How do we educate doctors and lawyers and consumers and builders? Don't even get me started about the building industry, but where do we start?
Well, doctors aren't trained to look at the root cause right now.
Yeah.
They're wanting to put a Band-Aid on symptoms, and I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out myself.
I think they've learned for a long time, and because the science wasn't there, that mold was kooks. And so one of the things that I'm really trying to do, given my background and my legal background, is to bring in academia. And so this expert, Dr. Lichtenstein, right, she's a PhD from Harvard. And I'm learning in the field that there's still going to be those other experts who say, that's nonsense. But you can look at the clinical studies and you can say, here, this school, had a mold problem. It resulted in neuro difficulties. cognitive difficulties for children who went there, right? It's a scientific study. It's peer reviewed. Here's a workplace that had the same problem. Scientific study, peer reviewed. These are academics writing in the literature. And so what I want to do with the ones who are the unbelievers is I just want to show them the science. And I don't know if we'll be able to change their minds. We might not. We might need to wait for the next generation who are reading the CNBC articles that say it causes neuro challenges, right? Who are raised up in hopefully a more educated world. And I think that those are the doctors and the scientists who I hope will understand environmental toxins and illness, because it's not just mold. I'm now dealing with a whole. I represent 100 people in Hawaii, and it's more and more every day, who were poisoned by their water. And it's exactly the same thing. They've been going to doctors, military doctors, and they're told, no, it's really not, don't worry about it. And it's like, no, they ingested jet fuel. You know, we should be giving them some basic toxicology tests. We should be checking their liver, checking their kidneys. This is not rocket science. This is Wikipedia, people. Even jet fuel causes problems, right? And so the science is there. The jet fuel causes cancer and neurocognitive problems and all the things. Mold also, Stachybotrys. We know now about the specific kinds of molds that do these things. So the science is there, and yet, especially when it's women who are complaining, they're labeled a little bit crazy. And it doesn't matter what kind of schools they went to or what their background is. They're still, they're the ones who are crazy, you know?
I don't think that doctors will come around on this. I think that from what I've seen and from doctors I've spoken to and found that actually are paying attention to mold and how it's making us sick, is they got out of allopathic medicine and became functional medicine doctors because they weren't helping people in their practices. And like you said, the science is there, but it's been there for over like 20 years.
Well, the problem too is that big pharma, gets a kickback.
They fund the schools.
If we tell people, including with the current pandemic, why aren't there any doctors saying, have an apple a day, keep the doctor away, eat good food, get some sunshine, get exercise.
There's magnesium.
It's just, prescriptions, get the jab, get all these other things. But what's it going to take for us to go back to a simplistic life where we eat good food? We eat God food, not man-made food.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know.
I completely agree with you. And I think one thing that we all have to continue doing is just advocating and educating, because I think that the more that we do that and we plant the seed, the more people will start to think about it or look into it. And I would encourage anybody who's at home right now who has a sick loved one who's not getting better, or maybe multiple people in their home, to go get a mycotoxin test done, to go get their blood tested, even if you don't believe in mold, because there's hope if they come back positive that could be the cause and the culprit to what's going on with them.
Yeah,
and I think that's right. You're both right that the science has been there, and maybe it'll be people's experiences.
I think so.
That change the perception over time. I think that's what my husband and I wanted to do in sharing our story with CNBC, was just to because we didn't know about this. We want other people to know that if several people in a house are getting sick and they don't know why, there might be a root cause there. And if you have water, I heard, and Emily educates on this all the time, but mold can grow 24 hours in, right? 48, 72, within 72 hours, it's there. So I just want people to know when they have a mold problem or when they have a water problem, immediately try it out. Prevent the mold from growing in the first place. I want homes to be built differently. I think that our experiences and sharing them, and even though it's vulnerable, I think that it matters, because I know I've seen so many people see my story and then reach out and say, I think this is happening to me.
Oh, yes. I think it makes a huge difference. And I think that if we all speak up about it, you can't ignore a group.
Yep. And you can't ignore
rising.
women. I don't think it's going to take a lot of women because your husband's involved in this. I know, and your husband too. But it starts with us, and I am so happy and proud to be aligned with the three of you because you are bold, brave, strong, beautiful women. So thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you too,
Yeah.
Shemaine.
Aw.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.